You got
Uh,
3 hours?
yeah. Hello,
Uh,
everyone. My name is Shane A. Bassett, and I'm here today with the director of Christmas. What's better than a Christmas movie, right? Especially this time of year. But did you know? Pleased to meet you, Heath. I'm surprised we haven't crossed paths before, but your movie's releasing the same day as the Eddie Murphy Christmas movie, Candy Cane Lane. How's that?
wow. Well, look, it's good to see Eddie Murphy back. I'm kind of looking forward
I
to the
totally
the, the
agree.
Beverly
Yeah.
Hills Cop. Yeah, everyone loves Eddie Murphy, right? Those original films and these stand-ups like Raw. So, look, I try not to publicly diss on movies because they're very hard to make. I'm
Sure.
sure Eddie is quite. I'm sure he got a good paycheck, and I'm sure he even knows what that is. But our film's just a very different, completely different movie. So it is. I've never seen a Christmas movie like it. It's kind of like a real human story that actually takes place around Christmas. So it does have those tropes, but
Sure.
obviously it's going to be nothing like what Candy Cane Lane is going to be like. Yeah,
Well,
that's that's yeah.
you're currently traveling Australia as we speak, promoting your film. Do you feel like a rock star going from city to city, town to town?
Well, what's really funny is, this is my fourth film in this. Well, you got to work really hard. So you
Oh
get
yeah,
older, and then you have kids, so it becomes harder, and your time is, you're more time poor than ever. But there's the Hannah Joy from the Middle Kids Band who plays Joy, one of the leads in our film. I was just thinking about her today, and I was talking, and I was like, how do you guys do it every night? You get up when you're doing a tour of America and you're playing 48 shows, and you
yeah,
got to play, you got to get on the bus, and you got to go into the next town. And every audience wants a piece of you at the end of it, and it's got to be fresh because it's
yep,
fresh to the audience. So there's a real process. It takes a lot of that's kind of like making a movie, and that's the hardest part of making like a movie is it's never over. So by the time you actually complete it, you are exhausted, and then you're
yes,
like, okay, I've got to get a new energy because the home stretch of getting it out there is just as exhausting. So it helps when you actually really love the movie and people really love the movie. So it's like I
sure,
feel like you're doing a noble thing. The time is well spent, and I'm just seeing the reaction on audiences. And this film deals with some really just truthful and important social
yeah.
messages. And
Well,
at
having
this
seen it, I
time,
know.
that's
Yeah, having seen it, I know, and I'm glad you mentioned important sort of issues that are brought up amongst the mayhem and the fun because it seems to be a trope to your previous movies as well. It's not a straightforward storytelling to this Christmas movie.
Yeah, it's it kind of came about during COVID, the initial COVID, and our family obviously couldn't see. A lot of people couldn't see their
Yeah.
families, and our family sort of fractured extended family anyway. So it was a really tough time. And I had another film with a big British name, and it was going to be a much bigger movie, and that was going to happen. And COVID happened, and it just
Oh,
torpedoed everything. So that was really, a real, but at that period of time, it was really disheartening, obviously. But because it was COVID and the whole world had stopped down, I couldn't really take that personally. It was like, well, people are dying right now.
right.
Nothing is
Yeah.
probably my film. It's not going to happen. So my partner and a few friends of mine have said, "Hey, did you think about maybe writing a Christmas movie? Because you write these really great characters, and Christmas is not like we really see in the Eddie Murphy movies and all of those films."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Yeah, well, I've seen a couple that I've liked." And I'm like, well, I don't know, it's Christmas. And so then I really had like time on my hands. So it was like, okay, what else are we going to do? We're going to watch all these Christmas movies. So I watched everything, like the Hallmark one. They were all just, apart from being terrible, like in every asset, they just didn't ring true on an emotional level to me or to anyone I know. And I was like, why do you guys like these movies? Oh, and most people's responses were, oh, because they're so bad. Like,
Right.
and
Right.
at Christmas, they're wrapping gifts generally. They're not, they're watching at home. It's just a bit of background noise, almost like playing some music. I was like, but this Christmas is really stressful. Christmas can be very lonely. Christmas can be like the image of this. at this period
Sure.
of time, out of the 365 days of the year, this is the one time that we're supposed to have our life shit together, and our life is supposed to be this magnificent ideal of happy families and success. And it's this illusion, and we're chasing it, and it's unattainable. And I was like, well, it didn't sit true with me. And I was like, well, I think I could actually write something kind of small, like I made Book Week and Broke my other films, which you
Yeah.
can see on Netflix and I was like, I didn't. The trickiest part of making a small film like this is the logistics, because you don't have a lot of money. But you're always trying to come up with a concept or an idea that doesn't look like, oh, these guys have no money. They're making
Yeah.
this movie, and it just looks cheap. But at Christmas time, we spend most of those times at home. A lot of the things are closed, right? So I was like, well, the device of bringing people together in our home, like that is like really achievable. And it was COVID when we actually made the movie. It was like COVID part two or three. And I was like, well, we're gonna have to shoot this in a bubble. Most of it's going to be set up. I write really strong characters. I know these actors are going to really want to do it,
Yeah.
and it just had to be. Our strength was emotional honesty. So I was like, I've got the themes here, and I kind of worked out the plot because Steve Marquand, who's been in all my films and was in Broke, as the lead. I still remember when we first met, his first job out of acting school at Theatre and a PM, where he went through with like Joel Edgerton and David Letterman, those guys,
Yeah.
was as the shopping centre Santa at Penrith Plaza Mall. That was actually his job. And seeing Steve and knowing Steve and putting him in that context, I was like, well, that's actually like tragic and funny at the same
Mm,
time. And I was like,
mm.
and then I had this thread, and we have a lot of music in the movie, and a lot of my actor friends and a lot of my musician friends really struggled with their
Right.
mental health during COVID because they weren't
Mm,
performing. Like for the real artists, performing is their therapy. That's how they actually cope. And that was
mm.
taken away from them. And I was like, well, that's really interesting. A lot of people were boozing in excess, and Australians booze a lot, and we booze to get through Christmas. And so all of those things all came together. And then I had the character and I had the themes and I sort of had the plot, and it just came out. It was actually, I wrote it in a month. It was a real pleasure to write, but I kind of knew how it was going to play out before
Yeah, Steve's always great. I mean, in anything, but I'm glad that you use him constantly. But did you write the character of Noelle for Nicole, or did she just come into the process
Nah,
afterwards?
well,
She's a
Nicole
really good
came in.
actor.
Yeah, she is. She came into the process later because we didn't. When I wrote this, I didn't know where we were going to make it. But all my films have been set in like communities, small, out of Sydney or
Sure. Yeah,
regional
yeah.
Queensland or something. So I was like, okay, so when you don't have a lot, you need buy-in from the community who believe what you're going to do. All those things you can't afford, you get like locations and all of that stuff.
Sure.
So when we go out to do that, it's really important that you actually invite the community in because big budget movies, often get made in these towns, and they never well, they don't make themselves accessible to the locals at all, right? So,
Right. Yeah.
and the locals in those areas still get excited by movies and these things because they're foreign to them and they feel so far away. So when you invite them, all of a sudden you've got this audience.
Yeah.
So, but it's also important to give people an opportunity. And Nicole happens to live near the area where we were. So I was like, oh, wow, she's a good actor. And she's actually in that area. And she read for it. I was like, yeah. And her and Steve had a friendship. I was like, well, you guys have got that rapport. I think it actually could work. So
Yeah. Good.
again, there's one of those happy accidents. There's a lot of happy accidents in this movie, even though it was really hard to make during like COVID. And we had
Right.
floods and all those things. There were
Mm.
also a lot of things that just happened and took care of themselves.
Is it true that if you make a Christmas movie, you never, it comes back every year? So this is your movie, and it'll probably get shown every year now, right?
Man, I put my kids in a little cameo one shot for that
Oh,
reason.
great.
And they were I didn't have to pay them, so that was great. But they've got since older, and my daughter was 3 and now she's 5. The film's out, but they sit on Santa's lap, and we just thought it'd be quite cute. But yeah, that was part of the motivation behind making the movie. I was like, do I want to make another little indie movie that does some festivals and then gets a limited run and then it sort of goes out
Sure,
gets
yeah.
forgotten. So I was like, but Christmas is really one of the only times that actually people seek out independent movies because most of the Christmas movies, the Hallmarks and whatever, they don't have stars. Like even
Mm,
there's not, there's very few stars in these types of movies.
mm.
But they still seek them out. And when we've made a good one, so it's going to be like an alternative to all those others. And it's being licensed this year. It's already licensed for next year.
Oh
So I
wow,
think
great.
it's going to have a bit of a life. And internationally, we had the world premiere at Austin, and it just went gangbusters. And so some big sales agents are confident of selling it,
Yeah.
and having even a limited theatrical release in the US next year, which is like kind of
Wow.
unheard of. So yeah, it's just I think it's a good movie with a lot of heart. People identify with it, and it just seems to be winning them over. So you just never know with films, but there was a bit of a calculated motivation behind it. Going, if we do a good job, it's Christmas. It just might have a life. So,
True. Yeah. Did the Americans, do you think they'll translate with our sense of humor? Okay.
well, they did in Austin, but Austin's
That's good.
a really cool town, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's
yeah.
not like Austin isn't Iowa. So no disrespect to Iowa, it's a beautiful
Sure, yeah.
place,
No, I
but
know what you're saying.
they look, yeah, like when we first pitched this, because we did try to get some money with it. We went to some of the streamers and we went to these people, and they really wanted to just sanitize it and make it like everything else, and they didn't get it.
Okay.
I was like, no, you don't get it. This has got to be like this. And they were like, we would have had probably more money, and I would have made something that was really naff. And I was like, no, this is not that. And so even the international marketplace were like, Christmas movie in Australia, no way that's going to work because there's no snow, right? And I'm like, well, it doesn't snow everywhere, right? So we went off and made it, and all
Yeah,
those people that said all those things have now changed their mind because it's just the humanity and the universal themes,
yeah.
and they've just connected to it. So we saw it in Austin with all these cinemas with famous actors and directors and regular Joes, and they were laughing and they were moved and they were loving it. I'm like,
Good.
this is like Campbelltown of Western Sydney, and they didn't care. It was just the heart of it, the piece. So
No, I'm glad, really glad to hear that. Did you call it Christmas from the beginning, or did it have other titles in mind?
no, it was Christmas, and then I've had some people. You always get people telling you what you should do, and you just if you listen
Right.
to every one of them, you just can't. But
No, no.
I always listen. But I had some people that are like, "Hey, this movie's too good for a Christmas movie. You're undervaluing this.
Oh, right.
Release it as like a drama that happens to be set at Christmas."
Right.
But I was like, hey, but I want to play into the Christmas theme because people get excited and watch movies at that time, right? And
Yeah.
I want to show them that you can actually do something good. So there was a couple of bigger distributors that really were into it, but they wanted to just make it not a Christmas movie at all and
Oh,
just your kitchen sink drama comedy. And I said no to that. And they don't like it when you say no to them.
I bet.
But I was like, look, man, I just really think that this is like the best way for this little movie. So, and I think the proof's in the pudding. I really do.
And what would you like audiences? I mean, you're seeing them firsthand, but what would you like audiences to get out of your movie the most? Just to come out with a smile on their face,
Well,
or to tell their friends, like, what will satisfy you the most?
look, I like the fact that it's a move. Like they're emotionally invested and they're engaged. They're entertained, but they walk away and they're
Yeah.
moved, right? And they've laughed a lot and they're moved. And it's like he, that guy's just like my brother. That girl's just like my sister, or that's like
Relatable.
my cousin, or that's my family. They relate to it, and I'm like, look, you know what? We're all different. We're all fallible. We're all flawed. So maybe this Christmas just actually reach out to that person you disconnected with, or just like stop and think and go, well, life is hard, right? And it's hard at this time. Maybe be just a bit kinder and a bit more open. Um, and the other thing is the themes of this film are so important because not everybody has families at Christmas. I know a lot of people that are very
Sure.
lonely at
Yeah.
that time,
Yeah.
and like think about those people. Don't just think about the money that you're spending on gifts that you know people forget about after a day. The real gift is your time and your presence.
Yep.
So that's sort of what I'm preaching. And the movie, our partners were brought on for the release of the movie with all these events is Smart Recovery Australia. They're a non-profit who do great work helping support addicts with their addictions and their
Okay.
families, and so
Okay.
that they actually got behind the movie, and it's just like this is the best tool, advertising tool for what we do
Yeah.
that's come across our desk ever. And so they've been presenting, they're buying sessions for like patrons and addicts and those in recovery and their families. And it's very hopeful, but it's truthful, but it's also hopeful. And that's what I want. And for those that are really struggling, it's like, hey, you're not alone.
Yeah.
And Christmas is the toughest time, but it passes. Okay. Like there's Boxing Day, there's the next day, and things are going to get better. But finding if people help one another and support, and you can get through things. You may never end up having all the trimmings,
Yeah.
but one day at a time is what we say in the movie. So and that's sort of a compassion thing that the
No, that's
film
good to hear.
focuses on. Yeah,
It's really good to hear behind the scenes. You've got that an organization like that helping out
yeah,
in part
yeah.
of the movie. That's really good.
Yeah, and we don't want to stigmatize it, maybe not, because this is a very entertaining movie and you laugh a lot. But that's like life, right? Like
Yeah.
life
Yeah.
can be tough, and often you laugh to get through it. Like you can have a drama that's very funny, but they're not like hokey gags. It's just the gags come from truth and absurdity of the situation. And when we're under pressure as human beings, we can. And at the end of the day, you often only laugh because it's so chaotic, right? And that's where the humor. It's not a joke to anybody in this movie at all. But as observers, we watch
Sure.
it
Yeah.
because we put ourselves in their shoes, and now we're laughing kind of at our own experience.
Well, before we wrap it up, two quick ones to finish it off. Firstly, and we haven't got all day, so it doesn't have to be a massive answer, but I'd like to know your take on the Australian film industry in general. I'm a advocate for indie Aussie film, local productions, ever since I can remember. Love getting behind all Australian projects, but have you've been in the industry a while? You've seen things change as a filmmaker. Uh, do you think it's going positively, negatively? What's your take?
Mate, it's going terribly, and I'm a positive guy. The biggest problem, and it's got to start from systemically. It's all just broken down. The model and the business of filming, the way it's consumed, the way we make films, the people we back, the stories that are told, the budgets that they're made for. That's if everyone knew the realities, you just go, well, this is just a bad
Yeah,
business model. So, but apart from that, um, I just think after going to a place like Austin, where there's a huge community of artists, and it started with Richard Linklater, and Richard Linklater and Robert Rodriguez, Robert's first wife Elizabeth, they were in Austin, in Texas.
yeah,
Like, there's no
yeah,
Hollywood; it's a long way from Hollywood, right?
yeah,
And they supported each other and other people, and they had this ethos of Austin first, others first, because
right.
filmmaking is collaborative. And they still have that, and that's what they preach to young filmmakers. People go and watch other people's movies over there, even if they're not in them.
Of
They
course.
champion them. They help them out. In Australia, other filmmakers do not go to other filmmakers' movies. Other actors don't go to other actors' movies. And we're supposed to be the ultimate country of mateship. Aussies don't go to Aussies
That's
because
sad
there's a
to hear
stigma
that.
around them. We've made some bad ones, and people have been burnt before, and it's just, I don't know if it's a tall poppy thing or whatever it is, but it's got to start from the filmmakers. They've got to
Mm,
start supporting each other, championing each other's stuff, turning up to the cinema. And we just, unfortunately, the only interest is the self interest. And that is the biggest problem in Australian film. Because a movement cannot start until that philosophy and psychology changes. But I've been doing
okay.
a long time, and it hasn't changed. It's just gotten worse. So, hey, I don't know, man. Yeah, how do
Yeah.
you change that? I don't know. Maybe it's the psychology of the nation, but New Zealanders love New Zealand films. They're flourishing, and their population is tiny.
Very
So,
true. Yeah. Well,
mm.
there's
And their work is edgy. Their comedies aren't safe. They're like, people are zigging, they're zagging, and like, how do you change that? It's a combo. Everybody from all facets of filmmaking needs to come together and sit down, and, and people need to learn the business, and we also need to learn how it works. And yeah, we just need to and young filmmakers just don't have a voice. They're not allowed to make mistakes. So if you're making a film outside of the system, and not everybody gets government money, if you do,
Of
like
course.
they've got to be nurtured and supported because you're going to make mistakes. It's hard to make a perfect movie straight off the bat. But even Steven Soderbergh and these guys, their first films are very flawed. But at that period of time, they were allowed to make those mistakes, and those
Yeah.
films are still kind of making money.
Yeah.
Like so. I don't know how to change it, but it starts. I think it starts from the culture of the filmmakers, and then and that'll bleed out because I've seen what it does and what's happened in Austin, and it started from Richard Linklater, who, as a really famous guy who made busy making films, still has time to help the
Yeah.
community and others out. Doesn't have to do that, but he still does.
Oh, I love Slacker, one of his early works, great film. And
Oh,
yeah,
and you know what? A
the
lot of
list
him
goes
is in
on.
his movies. Yeah. All of those films. And there's a lot of him in those movies. So when I discovered that and I learned that, I wasn't surprised. Right.
Mm.
So,
And
yeah.
last of all,
So we need to
the age-old question
get over this.
Is Die Hard a Christmas movie?
Yes. It's set at Christmas, but doesn't play up on the Christmas tropes. But it does have those themes of family and connecting and all of that stuff done in the guise of a brilliant thriller set and one
Glad
location
to
with
hear that.
great characters. It is a Christmas film in every sense of the word. Don't know about Die Hard with a Vengeance, but Die Hard one absolutely a Christmas
I want to say thank you to you. Keep up the great work. I remember
film. Thank you,
Crackers.
mate.
I remember the Christmas movie Crackers
Yeah,
when
I
I was,
remember that. Yeah.
and that was at the time until recently, really the only Australian Christmas movie I could actually think of, other than maybe Bush Christmas, which was before my time anyway.
Yeah. Well, as fate
Yeah,
would have it, I don't know if it was, people knew I was doing this and maybe other people thought, oh, that's a good idea. You just never know. But when I was like, hey, I'm going to do this, by the time we set about the research and the writing and the making and getting it out, Stan has started making Christmas movies. Like there are other Aussie Christmas movies now. They're very, very different. But,
they are.
maybe if that gets Australians watching Australian content, and indie movies, so be it. Let's embrace it and make one or two.
All right, mate.